This is Codified Wisdom. Conversations with leaders sharing what experience has taught them and what they know now that they wish they knew earlier. Hosted by Eric Eager, CEO and co-founder of 4Impact Data.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Codified Wisdom. Again, where we explore the journeys and lessons behind leaders who are shaping the future of business, and then specifically the accounting profession and advisory. Today's guest, I am so excited to have him on the show. His name is Martin Bissett, and he is one of the most recognized voices globally in helping accounting firms differentiate, price their value, and really move beyond commoditized services into true advisory. And Martin has worked with firms across the UK, North America, and beyond, and he's helping them really rethink their position and communicate value and create more meaningful client relationships. And he's been doing this, for a long time. But behind that expertise is a journey. And I think it's real important to everybody. He has a very interesting journey, how he got to this point. And we're going to spend some time walking through that journey and what has taught him about business, value, leadership, and beyond. So, first of all, Martin, thanks for being on the show. I'm so excited to have you on here. And, just to kick it off, let's start talking about where did you grow up and what early influences shaped how you think about business and specifically even more in communication. And just tell us how you got started.
Well, thank you, Eric, for having me here in the first place. Like a lot of people, I was born at a very early age, but I was born right here. I was born right here, pretty much a mile from where I'm sat. So in the hills above the great city of Manchester, England, where most of the great music and some of the great soccer comes from. And I was the son of a Scotsman, and I was brought up, as were my brothers, with a very, very, very heavy sense of Scottish national identity. So we were living in England, we were educated in England. Our mother was English, but heaven forbid we should ever identify as being English. And so I got my first lesson in brand identity before I could walk. Because, where most kids would have posters of pop stars or sports stars, I had clan histories, actual clan histories of ancient Scotland. So if anybody's ever watched Outlander or Highlander or any kind of lander, then you'll probably know what I'm referring to there. So that's where I was born and grew up. And although I've had the chance to travel the world many, many times over, I left once, but I came back. So I'm still where I started.
Wow. Well, okay. Well, let's talk about, so from early schooling and, as you progress and you go off to university, talk about the things that influenced you, the interest in business and the interest in entrepreneurship, and then which will lead you to, early steps to where you began and ended up today.
Yeah, so dad was the starting point because he didn't look like the other dads in the schoolyard, and he didn't talk or walk like them either. So he had the full suit with the tie that matched the pocket square, that matched the cufflinks, that matched the socks. And that's where I got the look from. So I got known for that look because I took it over from him. But he drove, and you've got to remember, Eric, this is northern Milltown, England I'm describing here.
Yeah.
So dad drove a Cadillac Eldorado 76. Okay.
Okay.
Cream bodywork, green roof. Okay. That didn't look like anybody else's car. This was dad doing his thing.
Yeah.
So much so as that when he bought that car, he forgot to measure whether it would go in the garage or not. And it wouldn't.
No.
So he had to widen it so we could get the car in. But at 12 miles to the gallon, not the greatest purchase he ever made. But we stood out. It was the talk of the street. It was the talk of the teachers at the school. And again, they're going in, but they're going in a subliminal format at this stage. They haven't been molded into, this is how you stand out from the crowd. This is your unique selling proposition. I didn't know those terms. I just knew we were different from everybody else. Our family didn't look like the other families, didn't act like the other families. Our dad didn't play along like everybody else did. So he would act in this way, and he would speak in very deep Sean Connery
Yeah.
tones, and so I knew business first of all from him and how he acted and his network and the people who I met that were in his circle, that would pat me on the head and give me a biscuit even though I didn't ask for one. And this was the start. This was the opening thing. And then from schooling, I got the opportunity to go to a very, very good school, one that's I think still in the top 5% in the country. I was very lucky in that regard. And my first trip to the US was when I was 15 years old. Now, at
Nice.
that point, I think the dollar was 188 to the pound at that time, so pretty much $2 to the pound. Never gone back. So I quickly worked out that if I bought music from Tower Records in California, en masse and bought myself a new bag, I could sell all the US versions of the record albums and stuff to my
Nice.
schoolmates for double the price. So that was a lesson that occurred very early to me. So also, my school developed you for academia, for further education, and I didn't fit that set. And I left school at 16. There was no university for me. The opportunity was there, but I shunned the opportunity because all I saw was high unemployment in the country. And that unemployment list getting longer and longer and longer. And when you went to the job store, I don't know if you have one of those over there, but the job
Yeah.
center we used to have, everything said 2 to 3 years experience. And I thought, how do you get 2 to 3 years experience? If you can't start anywhere.
Yeah.
So my gamble was, okay, all my friends are off doing their degrees. I'm going to go and get 2 to 3 years experience while they're doing that. And when they come out and look for entry level positions, I'll be the one hiring them.
Nice.
Now, I wouldn't recommend that strategy for anybody. It was something I took because I didn't want to do further education, but it worked because I was a line manager at the time that they were just coming out of school and didn't have a job. It actually worked out, but I wouldn't recommend anyone take that gamble.
Wow. Because there's a lot of talk these days about, really, there's a lot of, in the US, there's a lot of kids
Mm.
rethinking higher education and the cost in the US has skyrocketed. And so, something that you implemented and tried and did, many decades ago now is being revisited by a lot of kids and parents here, especially in this new AI era that we're entering. But let's dive into that. Wouldn't recommend. So there's obviously some let's just say some lessons learned along the way. Um, let's talk about some of those wish I would have known or
Oh,
had to learn
wow.
the hard way
Yeah.
experiences on that. I'm not going to follow the path that everybody else is following.
How long have we got? Yeah, this will take a while. And thank you for saying it was many decades ago as well. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes. So I guess I learned the hard way in just about everything. Because that play that we just talked about there that worked out for me in the short term didn't work out long term because what happens when these guys that you're interviewing have got those 2 to 3 years experience that you've already got and they have letters after the name and you don't?
Okay.
Now you've gone from being the king to being the pauper very, very quickly. So that's why I don't recommend it, because I learned the hard way that that was a short-term fix, not a long-term fix. And I was playing the long-term game. But I did learn, again, it's kind of hard to explain the job scene at those times, but for some reason, I suffer from something that not a lot of people do. So most people I come into contact with, Eric, I find they suffer from some form of inferiority complex. They think everybody else knows more or has an
Yeah.
advantage, and there's no evidence to back that up. That's in their own head. They're not
Yeah.
inferior, you know, they just think they are. Well, for me, I suffered from a superiority complex. I thought I was better than everybody else, and I had no evidence for it, and I couldn't back it up.
Got it.
But I had this sense of self-importance to go, oh, I'm going to win. I'm going to win everything I go into. So what happened was is that I started making demands of my we used to have these kind of job clubs that would help
Yeah.
young people get into work.
Yeah.
And I started making demands of them, saying, "Oh, I don't want anything that starts before this time. I don't want anything that pays less than this." And you had the guys looking at me going, who the hell do you think you are? You're 18 years old. And I'm like, and?
Yeah.
And here's the true story. So my big break came in CD-ROM software.
Okay.
Any kids watching this, ask your great grandparents about CD-ROM software. And that was when it was just replacing 3.5-inch floppy as the medium of choice for data. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what CD-ROM was. I just knew that the pay was good and I wanted to go along and have the job. Unbeknownst to me, I'm the last person to be interviewed. I'm also, in those days, you could age discriminate in those
Oh,
days as
wow.
well.
Okay.
So your job ads used to say nobody under 25, and
Mm.
I'm getting put forward at 18 for this. So not knowing I was last, but knowing that I was 7 years too young for the position, I grow myself a little goatee beard and wear some fake glasses. I don't need glasses. But I thought I got to look older. The
Yeah.
resume told the truth. The resume said if they want to look at the resume, they would see the truth. But I
Yeah.
thought, first impressions count. I'll try and
Yeah.
look older for this. And I went into the interview. I had two bosses here interviewing me, two guys interviewing me, and it was all the standard questions. It was all the where do you want to be in 5 years? And,
Yeah.
do you work better as an individual or part of a team? And I'm just rolling off these things. And then the last questions were, what are your strengths and weaknesses? So
Yeah.
strengths, I just went for any cliche I could think of.
Okay.
Strengths, loyal, committed, dedicated, fast learner. And I just did this, just wrote, and then he said, and weaknesses? And I blanked. I
Wow.
couldn't think in the moment of what I wanted to admit to from the long list of weaknesses that I had. Now, bear in mind, I'm 18 years old here, and I've got two guys in their 30s that are
Yeah.
interviewing me. And I went, weaknesses, yeah. I'd have to say 5'8" blondes. I swear to you, that was my answer in the interview scenario. Okay. Now, it came out of my mouth before I could catch it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to think of something. Okay. They both laugh, but they
Yeah.
both end the interview instantly. I say, thank you very much. There's the door. Arrivederci. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh. Now, at this point, and I know this is again weird for talking to a US podcast host here, but I didn't drive at 18. Not many of us do over here. So that interview was over. I thought, I've blown it. So I walk home, but home's not that far away.
Yeah.
So I walk back to my parents' home. I get in the door and I get the kids, check the internet for this. There was a landline in those days. And I go into my house and the phone's ringing. And I pick it up and it's those two that just interviewed me. And they said, is that
Wow.
Martin? I said, yeah. They said, can you start Monday? I went, yeah.
Wow.
And a few months into the role, I mean, I got to learn about a whole new world of CD-ROM. But
Yeah.
a few months into the role, they, they said, okay, you're just going well. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I said, can I ask a question, guys? I was the last in of a long list of people, I believe. Yes, you were. And after you asked me about weaknesses, I sort of got shunted out the door quickly. Yeah, you did. How did I get the job? And they said, anyone who's got the balls to say that to us at your age is exactly who we want in this company.
Wow. Wow.
I had no way of knowing.
So you
I got
didn't,
lucky. I got
as I
lucky.
like to say, you didn't know what you didn't know.
Right. I just didn't know you couldn't do things like that.
Which could be a benefit and it can be a true strength because you're
Oh, it's a
not,
double-edged sword. It's a double-edged
yeah,
sword.
yeah. It can definitely benefit, but it can also cause a lot of distress in challenges you may not had to faced
You're
had you known.
correct. My mouth gets me into trouble to this day, as you well know.
But yeah, that's okay. But you know, and then you're doing CD-ROMs,
Mm,
and then progressing, and now you're this an advisor and help accounting firms globally,
mm,
software companies that support accounting firms globally,
mm,
among other entrepreneurial ventures.
mm.
Let's start talking about. So you're in there. You're learning about CD-ROMs.
Hmm.
When do you get introduced to the accounting profession?
again, it was a complete and utter fluke. So if I just take you back slightly, then I can do the transition in. So the first business problem I ever solved, apart from getting myself a job, was in that CD-ROM company. We were a distribution company. We were a middleman. So we bought from the software house and we sold to the retailer, who then sold to the end user. So like four
Yeah.
stages of sale there, four stages of markup and margin as well. And in the early days, that was fine because
Yeah.
CD-ROM was new. There was enough for everybody. It was
Yeah.
toy time. Great. But as the big players, the big distribution players came in, our margins were getting squeezed. And as a small company, we couldn't survive because we had to sell volume to
Yeah.
compensate for the lower margin. So we couldn't do that. So, we were just trying to sell on what everybody else was trying to sell on. And I'm sat there going to myself, we need exclusivity. We need to sell something that nobody else sells. So I took that to those two bosses and I said, guys, I've got an idea. If we could get exclusive for a software house, and even if it's a lost leader, but only we've got it and everybody else buys their stuff from us while they're here and we use that to ship the higher margin stuff. And they went, genius, good work, good work. Who did you have in mind? And I said, oh, I was thinking of the Walt Disney Company. And they laughed me out of the office and said, it was going so well. Go sit down, little boy, sell something. But I was serious because I was thinking Disney product. Everybody needs Disney. Everybody wants Disney product. So this was the start. So I called Buena Vista Home Entertainment in London, and I said, "Hi." I mean, listen, out of nowhere, "Hi,
Yeah.
I'd like an exclusive deal," and it actually happened. The picture is actually up behind me on this wall of that deal happening. They said, "Look, we want to keep." Disney didn't want to. Again, I got lucky. Disney didn't want to supply little retail stores. They weren't interested in selling twos and threes of a product.
Yeah.
They were interested in big box retailers, the huge supermarkets, the huge electrical stores. That's who they wanted. So it actually came at a great time for them. They wanted somebody who could take over the small stuff. Again, I didn't know this. I got lucky. So we ended up signing a deal with Disney. So that was the first thing. And that gave me the confidence because then I got Disney marketing money and I got Disney promo in the era before social media. It would have been great in social media. So as time went on, the ethics went out of that business. And I
Okay.
moved on to a hardware company selling AT MIDI cases, ATX cases. We'd import, we'd sell en masse, and it was just getting worse. And people would sell their grandma to sell a box,
Mm.
and it just wasn't right for me. It just didn't
Yeah.
suit me. I just couldn't do it at all costs selling. Selling I could do, just not all cost selling. So I'm sat there in my office one day, and I'm thinking to myself, right, okay, what do I want to do in my life? Well, I want to help people. Okay. How do I help people in a business context? Consulting. Yeah. Now, what do I know about consulting? Nothing. Okay, we'll start there. And that's where we started. And they used to be on CD-ROM, there used to be these business search discs. And I literally typed in management consultants and my hometown. That was my search criteria.
Yeah.
And the two names came up, two firms came up. I called the first one, and a lady answered. And I said, "Could I speak to the managing director, please?" And she said, "What's the call regarding?" I said, "The call's regarding employment." And she
Okay.
went, "Oh, is this about the vacant marketing manager's position?" I went, "It is there." So I get myself into, actually, I didn't get that job. So I did about 7 interviews for that job, and somebody who actually knew what they were doing got that job. But I was given the job of their assistant.
So you're 7 interviews into an accounting firm, and tell us what happened after that.
Yeah, into a consulting firm, yeah. And I didn't get the job. Somebody who knew what they were doing got the job, and I got the assistant's job, but I was nevertheless in. So this management consulting firm has found itself a niche in that it can provide leads for accounting firms who want some grade A, grade B new business. Because previously, accountants hadn't been allowed to do that in this country. They had been,
Yeah.
restricted by their institute from doing so. So this was a brand new world where the institute were relaxing the guidelines. Accountants were thinking, hey, we could actually go out there now. We don't have to wait for business just to walk in. And this is where it started. And of course, these accountants needed not just the lead gen, but they needed the sales training as well, because they can't sell, still can't. So they needed somebody who could analyze what was going on in the practice, be able to define their growth requirements, work out who could actually convert these leads, produce the leads, help them overcome objections, help them price, help them negotiate, help them close, help them onboard. And so this became my world. And when I learned that accountants being proactive improve people's lives, anywhere from stopping them from going broke and bankrupt through to achieving their ultimate goals and professional and personal aspirations, I'm like, this is something I could spend a career doing.
Wow. And let's talk about that because a lot of people think, the perception is that when you go talk to a CEO, some of them think of, oh, well, if I need my tax return done or if I need my financial statements, I'll talk to my CPA.
Right.
But in real world, after time, people lean into them to get all sorts of guidance. And you start the journey with your accountant. But do you think that the profession is kind of a little bit mislabeled or typecast in the way of helping business owners along their journey?
Typecast, certainly, but with good reason.
Okay.
Because the vast majority of the profession are still in that reactive mode. And we only see change when we see legislative change in there. But there was a cohort, this is the important part, there was a cohort of firms who knew they could do more
Yeah.
for their business clients and critically wanted to as well. So in order to do that, we have to surgically remove the existing accountant. If we want to do it for a new client. So the goal for the accountants, the proactive accountants, was to go beyond compliance. And at the time, there was a thing in the UK and the US called the boot camp methodology. And I'm in the 90s here.
Yeah.
And the boot camp said, there is no future in compliance. The future's advisory. Go beyond. And here we are some years later.
Yeah.
But that was the message in the 90s. And so firms got excited about that and said, yeah, wait, we don't have to wait for the business to walk in. We don't have to just do the same work over and over again. We could be doing cash flow forecasts. We could be doing management accounts. We could help them find funding. We could manage their personal financial portfolio. We could do this. And they got two pieces of enthusiasm. The first one was, wow, think of the bottom line here.
Yeah.
And the second one, the more altruistic one, was we can actually help people here. We can actually make a difference. And a lot of accountants get into accounting to help people. A lot of bookkeepers do as well.
Really?
They choose that course because they're not sales and marketing people. That's not what they are born to do. But they do want to be useful, and they have a skill in mathematics so that they can save people tax, or they can spot a problem before it happens, or whatever. And therefore, that really helps business owners. And you become, as I always say, somebody's without whom. And that's the accountant's greatest strength. They are business owners without whom. By which I mean that when you win an award, if you're watching the Oscars or whatever, somebody gets up, whoever wins, and they pick up their award, and I don't advertise who that is, and they pick up the award there, and they go, I'd like to thank the Academy for this award, and I'd also like to thank, and then usually their manager, their agent, or God, or somebody gets thanked.
Yeah.
And they go, without whom this wouldn't have been possible. And accountants are without whoms in the lives of their clients.
Wow. We've been hearing this for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And you discovered this early.
1998.
Okay. So it's been a few years.
Yeah.
Okay. And the accounting profession has been known not to change rapidly.
True.
Let's talk about the perseverance, I guess, of finding those thought leaders in the profession. You're beginning this career. You've kind of found your calling. This what I want to call this force multiplier of, hey, if Martin Bissett wants to help businesses, what gifts, talents, and what can I do to help as many business owners as I can? And then force multiplier was, hey, if I can help accountants and accounting firms improve the odds for a number of their businesses, then it can have impacts on obviously the businesses themselves and the satisfaction and their entrepreneurial ventures of surviving against the odds, but also communities and the ability to employ and families and those kinds of things. So you're starting on this career and you're going up against people who don't historically have want to change.
Yep.
Uh, and that's okay because a lot of it has been rules and regulations and debits equal credit. And now you're beginning to introduce this. You can be more. You can add even more value. But back in '98, I mean, you even had like government. I mean, you had institution regulations saying thou
Hmm.
shall not market.
Right. Right.
Um, let's walk through that journey. And I know that we could be here for hours, and we might, we will possibly have some follow-ups on because in today's world, and we're going to fast forward today and we'll walk through how we get there. Today's world is the storm is coming, and I don't want to be Chicken Little here, but the evolution of the profession is being forced upon rapid change quickly. And this storm is, it's not your little, afternoon shower. The storm is
Right.
coming,
Right.
which can be great. It's sometimes forced change is going to be great. And you look back on the other side of it and it was, beneficial. Let's walk through your 98. You're starting to talk to accounting firms to say that you can market. You can go talk to clients. You can bring this up. Tell us some of the biggest mistakes you found you personally trying to change them, and what mistakes now did you find along the way that accounting firms were doing on this transformation, as they call it today.
Where do I begin? Well, first of all, let's put some heavy context in this. Let's be a bit of buzzkill for a second. So, at the same time as this is happening, Eric, my own father is failing in business. In fact, I go as far as to say he's already failed at this point. So, I'm watching it happen. I'm watching what happens when the person who is not as financially literate as they should be doesn't get the help in real time. Because my dad was very, we weren't a
Yeah,
rich family, but we were a comfortably off family in my
yeah,
childhood. By the time I reached adulthood, I've been below the breadline twice in my life. Okay, so I've seen the others. That's all. I come from a riches to rags story as opposed from a
okay,
rags to riches story. Okay,
yeah,
so at this point, again, I don't know if the editors want to keep this in, but by this time, Dad's already had his first suicide attempt at this point
yeah,
because his business has failed. As a result of his business has failed, his self-esteem has failed.
yeah,
As a result of that, his marriage has failed. As a result of that, his alcoholism has succeeded, and that's taken him to where he is. So I'm watching in real time a business owner who had the world at his feet
yeah,
end up being a hermit in a room and only ever coming out when they needed to go and get some more booze. So I'm watching this happening. So it was taking on a real sting for me, a real added impetus that I thought, if I can stop this happening for other people. And my good friend Will Farnell says that accountants have got a choice between two things. They can be an accounting practice or they can be an accounting business. If they're an accounting practice, they sell their time for money and that's it. So the number of bums and seats they've got and the number of chargeable hours that they can recover is their total capacity. That's it. If they're an accounting business, they develop a commercial departmental system or a hierarchy that allows reporting lines in production, administration, sales, marketing, and so on. And so they sell the outcomes of their work for money, which they can replicate many times over and leverage much more. So this is what I was seeing happening in
yeah,
the marketplace at the time. And interestingly, as we've gone through this last 5 years of a land grab, and maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but the private equity land grab that we've seen both in the UK and the US over the last 5 years,
yeah,
well, our top 10, our top 30, our top 100, our top 300 in both countries doesn't look like it did in 98. Why doesn't it look like it in 98? Because guess who got bought? The ones who went proactive, the ones who built their portfolios, the ones who decided they were counting businesses, not practices. They're the ones who were that more attractive purchases for the PE houses. So at that time, I'm seeing accountants making the following mistake. They had not made a differentiation between referrals that walked in the door
yeah,
and proactive opportunities that they had to close. So they would always come to the table with, well, Martin, we convert 95% of everything we ever go and see. Yeah. That's like saying I walked through 95% of doors that were already open. You know,
Okay.
but they couldn't make the distinction between actually having to go to a business and making a commercial case as to why they should cut the umbilical cord from their existing accountants that they've been with for the 185 years and it's their brothers, uncles, dogs,
Yeah.
whoever, and there's a loyalty barrier there. So it's an emotional tie, not a logical tie. And they've got to make a case for saying, get rid of that accountant that you've had all your life and come to us who you don't know. And they thought that was the same as a referral, handling a referral who's already walked in the door, already decided to use them. It took a lot of years to get that shift done and that needle moved. And I'd argue that a lot of firms still require it moving for them.
Wow. And that's eye-opening. And for anybody listening, I mean, this is one of those things that these are uh, these are so common sense, but it's hard to get to that, that conversation because it's so easy to, hey, I got that referral. Business is great. And you know what they say, it's the easiest business to get
Mm,
is from existing clients and
right.
referrals to other clients. And so, this moving from that to a now actually I have to, and let's just, here's the thing. I think that there is a negative connotation in the minds of CPAs
Hmm.
of I don't like to sell.
Yeah, of course.
I don't like to sell. And then because the same thing, a lot of people don't like to be sold to.
Right.
But if you come with the perspective of in your case, in your story, and in anybody that's done any homework, 95% of the businesses that are started are either a great salesperson and knows how to sell and provide a great service, or they produced a great product. 95%. And there's only the small percentage that have what we would call financial literacy, that they're,
Mm,
financial focused. So 95% of the people don't know what they don't know. A lot of
yeah.
times it's their first business. And so while they're growing their business, they're on this journey that they've never been on before.
Yeah.
Now you have all this knowledge and expertise and the ability to help not one business, but hundreds of businesses.
Mm,
Is the perspective and the mind shift from accountants shouldn't be, I'm not selling as much as making sure that I can help and making sure you're aware of the ways that I can help you, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner.
yeah, I would say that the ways making them aware of how you can help is the marketing part. But as you rightly say, accountants are violently allergic to selling. So much so as they can't use the word. We have to call it business development
Yeah.
because we can't say sell, because that would be beneath us. Of course, we are professionals. So yes, yes, it's if you ask an accountant to sell, you're on a hiding to nothing, that's for sure. But what the practitioners often don't understand is a sell, as it applies to accountants, is nothing more than a collaboration to solve a problem. You would not be talking to a business owner if they were perfectly happy with their current accountant and had no intention of changing. You wouldn't get a meeting with them. So what you get is a meeting with a business owner who tells you they're perfectly happy with their current accountant and have no interest in changing. But that's not true. That's their initial objection. That's objection number one. Get
Yeah.
past that, accountants. Get past that. And accountants often don't get past that and they box shy of that. But ultimately, what's going on behind in this business owner is that they're not getting the advice, or they don't know what to ask, or their current accountant isn't very responsive, or the current accountant only sees them at year end, and they don't know, as you say, what they don't know, and they could do with some help. They could do with an arm around the shoulder. So they've reached out to the accounting firm or accepted an invitation from the accounting firm to meet with them so that they can work out whether they are not getting the right service or whether they're all just as bad as each other. So when an accountant understands that and goes, so tell me what's going on. Why do you start up in business? What are you trying to achieve? Who cares if you don't make it? Let's just start there. Tell me about it. Very few accountants can do that. They'll take a snapshot of the P&L, is what they'll do. But the accountant that's collaborative and understands that there's a problem going on here, I just haven't found out what it is yet. They're not prepared to tell me yet. They don't trust me enough yet. So I have to win their trust. So I have to create some empathy, first of all, that I know what they're going through and I've seen this before and I've solved it before. The accountant that does that, the proactive professional, let's call it, they're the ones that get competitive advantage. Because had there been an opportunity to work with this business, they wouldn't have got the meeting in the first place.
Wow. So again, just seems so common sense. But how many years of, because we just fast forwarded through about multiple decades of condensed experience here in this one podcast. How many years did it take? And you're still advocating. What were the lessons you learned when you came in and go, this is not rocket science, folks. This is come in and ask these questions, proactively reach out. What did you have to learn the hard way in, this should be simple, folks. Why is this so hard to get implemented?
Well, I think first of all, it's very easy to confuse something that is easy with something that is simple. Or put it another way, something that is simple with something that's simplistic. Those two words mean different things.
Yeah.
Simple means I can grasp it. Simplistic means it's easy to do. And so these principles that we're talking about, you can grasp them. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. But we're talking to a profession with over a century of baked-in behavioral DNA to not do these things.
Wow.
You're turning a big ship around in the water here.
Yeah.
Where the profession says, no, keep up to date with your professional updates. No, react to the clients. No, make sure that you've got this tick, this tick, this tick, this tick. And they're deadline chasers. Compliance providers are deadline chasers. So there's never time to go, what are we doing here? What are we doing with our practice? Where do we want to go with this? Because they're answering client A, client B, client C, worried that client D just walked out the door and it was a 40 grand job and they don't have a replacement for it because they don't want a pipeline. Like I say, an accounting practice, not an accounting business. So as a result of that, until someone breaks that chain, it's never changing. It's never changing, which is why we see only two things that I've ever seen move the needle. Legislative change moves the needle because accountants have to, by law, now react.
Yeah.
In the same way as businesses, by law, have to be compliant and therefore need an accountant.
Yeah.
And the other thing has been the great consolidation of the last 5 years. The big land grab from private equity houses, because now firms that are acquired are now having to answer to regional commercial structures. Partners now have bosses. They now have targets on their heads. That never used to be the case. And that's the price of getting a big payout on a 60-20-20 deal over 3 years, So all of a sudden, I've actually got to get my ass in here. And that's a cultural shift. And that's why you see so many partners spin out from acquisition deals when their non-compete expires. So whenever anybody sees a firm bought in a particular geographical area, give it 3 years, there's going to be a lot of new firms showing up around them with all the partners who didn't want to stay in the corporate thing. They got their money, but they didn't want to stay in the corporate world. So that's what happens. So it takes something seismic. So we just talked about two things there: legislative change and a huge amount of money. It takes those two to move the needle. As well-intentioned as I was, and as well-intentioned as many of my professional colleagues were, we would only ever influence cohorts. I used to say it was 12% of the room. 12% of the room, whoever you were talking to, they wanted to know what you had to say. The rest, they checked out before you'd done the intro.
Wow. Well, now, fast forward to today, and firms are now faced with what I want to call the perfect storm of change. The first thing is the private equity consolidation. But what I want to do is talk to what happened? Like, why did all of a sudden, because accounting was this kind of, traditional, I hate to say it, but it wasn't the sexiest profession in the world, but it made money. It made money. People needed it. And
Yeah.
PE, and don't, everybody knows I'm a recovering CPA. And so I can poke fun at myself. And, but then all of a sudden, because PE is always chasing high tech and, it's all sexy, flashy, moving, moving and grooving, get these things going.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden they got their eyes dead set on the accounting profession.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have that. We'll talk to that first. The second thing is going to be all of a sudden now they are equipping firms to make investments into technology. So you get
Hmm.
all of a sudden you got a PE firm where before it was coming out of the partner's pocket. Hey, pass
Hmm.
the hat. We're all going to chip in and invest in this. There's going to be an ROI. Now PE firms equip with millions of dollars to modernize, and at the same time you've got AI technologies causing this wave of disruption in the
Hmm.
accounting profession. And the third of the perfect storm is that nobody, the pipeline of people wanting to be accountants because it's perceived in the next generation of that's a boring old profession. I don't want to do that. I want to do the things that are impactful, that make a difference. I want to, they want to have a bigger difference in the world.
Yeah.
Let's break this down. Let's talk about why do you think the PE firms are buying up all, consolidating so many accounting firms in what used to be perceived as not the sexiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Why is it all of a sudden that the spotlight's on it and they're buying everyone they can get their hands on?
So, first of all, finance houses that have bought into fintech companies that sell to accountants have seen how hard it is to do, and are tired of blowing their money on sales teams that think sending cupcakes to accountants is going to equal deals on software on tech stacks. No, it's not. You know, and what I think they hankered for after a lot of bets went south, I think they hankered for something a bit of a steady Eddie investment. Give us a where's a sector with I don't know, a high retention rate, low attrition rate, recurring fees, steady income cash flow. Oh, wait a minute. That's the very people we've been trying to sell to, you know? And they don't have commercial structure, so we can add a lot of value to them. They're not fully maximized in their pricing or profitability, so we can add a lot of value to them. So I think that's why they went that way, because they saw how hard it was to sell to them, but saw exactly what it was that those businesses actually held. So it provided a little bit of comfort and security blankets for the PE houses to go, okay, this is great. We now have something that we can actually rely on, and we're not throwing millions away at some piece of technology that may or may not be adopted by its market that it's targeted at. So I think that was the first thing. And I think the second thing, and this is up for debate, this is just a Bissett theory, this one. But I think that no matter what happens to professional services firms in the future, whether compliance lives forever or whether compliance really is dead and advisory of the future, or whichever way it goes, they're buying real estate. They're buying real estate everywhere they go because depending on
Yeah,
how the firm has structured the property and whether the partners own it, whether the firm owns it, however they've done that, in a lot of
yeah,
cases, they're buying a lot of buildings that can be repurposed for lots of different things. So they're buying property, a bit like a McDonald's play, where
okay,
the McDonald's have got every intersection in the US. They're on the corner of every intersection in the US. It's a commercial property play. It's not actually a fast food play. Fast food is just what we sell out of that building, but we own the building. And guess what? The franchise has got to pay us for it. So I think there's a secondary play there as well, but that's a basic theory. But certainly the desire to have something far more forecastable
yeah,
than tech was high on the agenda of many PE houses who had angry shareholders wondering where their money was.
yeah. And And so now they're consolidating. They're realizing that there's so many relationships that
Mm.
accounting professionals and accounting firms have with the business owners. Like one thing I always point out is that the number one most trusted business advisor to any business leader
Mm.
is their CPA.
Hmm.
So now you buy and you're now getting this high leverage trust, and now they're starting to pile in more services and
Yeah.
complementary services, wealth management, transaction services,
Yep.
and a bunch of other things. And then they introduce all this technology, which
Mm.
is scaring a lot of people because it's now, well, is the technology going to replace my job? I hear both sides of the story. I hear, well, we've lived through this wave before. all these naysayers about, oh, we had this same conversation 20 years ago when name the technology.
Right?
What I've been talking to people about and I want to get your opinion on is, why is this different this time? First of all, is it different this
Completely
time?
different. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it is
And
different. Yeah.
if it's different, why is it different? And why is this storm, as I like to tell a story of my cousins in New Orleans. Okay. They had lived through multiple hurricanes before
Right.
Katrina.
Yeah.
And we were on the phone. I live in Dallas, and we were going, hey, I think this one, I know that you've always like, this is not fine. We'll just ride it out. This one's different. And
Mm.
we convinced them, thank goodness, and they got out, and the city's been rebuilt.
Yes.
But how many CPAs are thinking, like my cousins in New Orleans, oh, we've lived through multiple
Yeah.
hurricanes. We're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And this one's coming to, I mean, it's going to wipe out and transform a lot of things. What do you think is different this time?
Oh, well, the proof is different this time because we've seen the deals done. So, first of all, I share their skepticism. I've been hearing the compliance is dead message now for 30 years. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm with them on that. And I'm now old enough, Eric, to have been at a conference and heard a speaker tell us about this ever-changing, fast-paced, hyper-connected world and how we have to adapt. And they were referring to the implementation of fax machines at the time. Fast-paced, hyper-connected,
Okay,
everything's
this is
changing, really.
and
So I
and for
understand the cynicism.
yeah, and I guess for our younger listeners,
Oh,
again,
yeah.
landline, fax machine.
Landline, fax
Um,
machine, letter-headed paper. Yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to go
yeah,
back to like land. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Ask Claude or Gemini or chat what it is.
Thank goodness I didn't say rotary phones, but yes. So what's different this time is that that was always hyperbole. That was always it's coming, and it never arrived. And accountants always took the position of, well, we'll just wait for it to arrive and then we'll react to it. Well, that's what we
Yeah,
do. We react. But this time we've had a 5-year sustained PE land grab of accounting firms. That's never happened before. Never, ever, ever happened before.
wow.
You know, we have here in the UK something called MTD, which stands for Making Tax Digital, okay, which is a piece of legislation which everybody's got to be compliant with, not just accountants, but business owners too. We've all got to be compliant with it, and we all have to change what we're doing, and things will never be the same again. That doesn't happen very often in my lifetime. So the way in which we interact with the government, the way in which we interact with the client, the way in which we interact with our staff, the way in which we produce the work, the way in which we analyze the work, all of that has come together and changed at the same time for the first time. That's never happened before in the years I've been doing it. And I know the old guys, and they tell me that, or even older guys, they tell me that didn't happen in their time either. So this is new. And what I think we'll see now with all of the great tier one and mid and upper tier two property now taken, what they have done, the PE houses, as they did their due diligence on the finances. So the EBITDA multiples will work through. What I don't think was done as well is the due diligence on culture and tech stack. And I don't think they worked out that Office A can't talk to Office B because those systems don't work together. And I don't think they worked out that audit hates tax and tax hates audit, and they don't like sharing information either. So, and then you see what I see with the Baker Tilly, when the Baker Tilly investment was made, how they quickly split off advisory into its own LLP. And tax and assurance went that way, and advisory went that way, because they knew full well the people running those two organizations did not need to be the same people. They needed different people in those organizations. Two different P&Ls straight away. So I think this is the first time out that we've seen this amount of change in this short of a window and actual evidence of stuff. So the long, long forecasted cloud migration. Well, it's a done
Yeah.
thing now. Who's coming through from the institutes to be accountants? Are they people in the suits with the ties, with the pocket squares and the no. No, it's the beards and the hoodies and the stickers on the laptops.
Yeah.
And the beards with the guys as well. These are the changes that are happening. The audience, the professionals look different. The business owners, they look different. The types of industry sectors they're in are different because the digital revolution changed it all. So I think this is why, for the first time, there's a legitimate case to be made. Not that compliance is dead. I don't think we can make a case for that. But if we want to be profitable, if we want to be useful, and if we want to be diversified to insure ourselves against the risk of compliance becoming automated, then we have to move to a more proactive model, an accounting business rather than accounting practice.
Wow. And we're all living through that the change now. The other thing I was going to add to that also, and we're starting to see this, is that before a lot of these things were tool sets. Hey, I can do a tax return faster. I used to have to fill out these, and now I can automate the production of a tax return, but I still had to do a bunch of work.
Mm.
Now we're in the world of AI agents that are actually learning and doing big components of the work.
Yes.
So we have all these components, and it's then this shift to, and I think to your point, it's for some people as woe as me. The other people will go, this is why I got into the profession because I wanted to help business owners. I wanted to help them understand that cash is king and that you need to know things like days of cash and cash conversion cycles and margins and clients and so much data that can be utilized not on the warning signs, but actually what you can do about it.
Yeah.
And, so for a lot of people, and I think for the next generation and kind of the rethinking what an accountant is, you can now start to present these opportunities as moving into real advisory. And, there is a significance of change in the world, which kind of started this whole conversation, is that it will liberate and free a lot of us from the how I had to learn, which was ticking and tying and doing just repetitive return after return. That's how I learned. And then I would go have a senior review my work, and the senior would tick and tie and tell me the things I needed to work on. And that's eventually, how I progressed through a firm. Well, today, a lot of that is now, I guess we're getting the great promotion, is that I don't have to, but at the same time, I need the experience. I need those things. And so that's the other bigger challenge. But we're going to run out of time today, and we'll have to have a follow-up conversation on that. So what I'd like to do now, as I've always do with our guests, is that, to kind of wrap things up, if I suddenly produced a time machine and it showed up right behind you, and you had an opportunity to go back in time and take, the current Martin and go back to the younger Martin and pull them aside like, Back to the Future and go, hey, I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of advice. Where and when and what would you say to the younger Martin?
Honestly, I would say not to worry so much. There's all those when you're in the teens and early 20s part of your life, am I enough? Will I achieve this? Will I get there? Blah 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 blah. And all of these self-doubting questions, I would have killed all those off because it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. As long as you apply yourself, it's going to be fine. And probably for him to try quiff a lot earlier, and some black polo necks would have been a good idea as well. I think it would have looked cooler if he'd have done that sooner. But from an accounting point of view, Eric, when you ask that question, what came to mind is if I go back to that time, if I go in that time machine and go back to 98,
yeah,
I've got 55-year-old accountants telling me that audit is the backbone of accounting. It will always be this way. It's always been this way. And they would have told me that when in the UK, the audit threshold was £250,000 and everybody beyond that in revenue had to have an audit. And it's now over £10 million. So we've seen an entire service line, a core service line of accounting wiped out in the time I've been involved. Okay. The other thing that comes to mind is that in those days, business owners weren't influenced by fintechs as to what they should be using. The accountants told them what to use. But fintechs now come in from the other side and advertise to the business owners, and at Super Bowl we get TurboTax or whatever, other things are available.
Yeah.
Influencing the business owners of what to tell the accountants to use. So I would have told them to watch out for influence coming from the other side as well. And also that the change of perception as well. In that over here in the UK, we had chartered management accountants, chartered certified accountants, and chartered accountants. And that was a class division, you know?
Wow.
Bronze, silver, gold. So it was,
Yeah.
and nobody cares about the designations. They're still here, but nobody cares about them. Nobody can tell you what they mean. What they want now is a best friend to their business. A business best friend is what they want now. They don't care if it's chartered management or chartered. I don't know what the difference is. Who cares? So I would have told them to have, maybe compliance isn't dying, guys, but maybe you should be the best friend to business anyway, because it's a great insurance policy for the well-being of your practice going forward, financially speaking. And I think that's probably even more necessary today than it was back then, to become the business owner's best friend.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you heard it here first. The BBF.
Yeah, you're not the BFF, the BBF. Yeah.
There you go. Well, hey, listen, Martin, thank you so much for sharing your journey. I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to have follow episodes where we can dive into some of these topics, because I think there's so many people that could use that advice and wisdom and guidance as we're all kind of going through this journey together. And I think it's exciting. It's scary like anything else, but it's also can be very exciting. So it was so nice to share your perspective, your takes on things. And for everybody that enjoyed this week's episode, stay tuned. We'll be back with a new episode next week. And while you're out there, hey, go out there and make a difference. And let's just say improve the odds for businesses out there. All right. Take care, everybody.
The collective wisdom and lessons learned from these conversations have been the inspiration for the business guidance system at 4Impact Data, helping CPA firms grow client advisory services.